it says a lot.
Sorry, Rob.
And no problem whatsoever. And it says in the spiritual experience that, a lot of times you don't even notice it yourself that it's happened. People around you have noticed a change in you. And that's one of the big things. And the other thing that I will mention is Dr. Bob always said, trust God, clean house, and help others. And, that is, he said that's basically what the program breaks it down to, and, I must say, 3 great, easy things to follow through with.
Yep.
After they've seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time, provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Of course, we all fall much below this standard many times, but we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree.
So what they're trying to say here, and we just kind of said a little bit there in the beginning of what this is, will highlight the fact that they want to continue to demonstrate that it can be sober, considerate, helpful, and regardless of what anyone says or does. And they're going to have periods of time when people are going to lash out at the alcoholic, and that's going to be a time for them to dig deep, pause, and react in a considerate and helpful way. But what I think is the more important thing here that we're talking about is that nobody's perfect, and we are going to find ourselves getting into a verbal altercation from time to time. I'll call it that. You can call it an argument. You can call it a kind of a selfish kind of reaction to something. But the big thing here, and I've highlighted this and underlined it, but we must try to repair the damage immediately. Remember, in step 10 is that when we recognize that we've done something wrong, we've let our emotions get the best of us, and we've lashed out, it's time to, take a few minutes, but turn right around and try to correct what was done or said that was wrong. And especially for a newcomer. And I'll tell you, for me, after I got sober and I was well into my recovery, anytime that I had an issue or a problem, I doubled down on my recovery. I don't know why it was, but I was determined that I was not going to let a particular issue, challenge, or altercation type of event that would happen that was not going to force me, or I wasn't going to resort to the heckets and go in and decide I'm going to start drinking again and blame it on that particular incident. Now, I say that to tell you that by and large, a lot of recovering alcoholics will actually use that as an excuse to go back and drink and cause them to have a spree. And that's what they're saying here. By and large, most people will resort to that. And that's the challenge that you have to be aware of and be watching out for. If you're a sponsor, you can be there to kind of assist your sponsee get through that challenging time. Or if you are in fact the person that's relatively new or having those pangs and those ideas, it's a time for you, like anything, if you can do it, by gosh, do it. And that is double down on your recovery and say, I'm not going to let this get me. I'm just not going to let it get me. Use that higher power, find that inner strength, and push through it, and leave the bottle alone. Rob?
If there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Sometimes it is to the best interest of all concerned that a couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcohol continue its program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties.
Yeah, and this is one of those that it's going to be condition dependent, meaning that everybody's kind of got a different scenario. We've got a different threshold with regard to whether or not we've got the ability to actually sit down, repair the damage, do something that is um, uh, that both of you are give and take, and go through this. If it is at this point in time where there is divorce and separation, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that there's probably a need for a therapist to be a mediator, if you will, that type of thing. And those are all okay. Those are things that a individual is doing which is be above and beyond, and I'll say this kind of more directly, it's above and beyond their recovery from alcohol. It's important that they continue to do their program, and it's important for them to stay focused on that, because I'm going to say that your recovery is what is going to help you do the right things so that you can create an atmosphere or a condition where you can actually sit down with your other half and potentially make reparations to fix the relationship and possibly get back together. A lot of times when there is separation, more likely than not, it's the damage is done and it's hard to get back together. And certainly as soon as divorce is filed for, things are probably, again, probably too far gone. At best, they can probably be friends that comes out of that. And that is an accomplishment, for people that do get a divorce and can remain friends. It's a good thing. But through all of that, the most important thing that a recovering alcoholic can do is continue to do the right things by which that helps their recovery. And that is living that spiritual life, keeping their side of the street clean, fixing the issues that have come up as they come up, and that type of thing. So this is a very tangled, kind of complicated situation, and I would tell you that a situation it's dependent on the individuals and their threshold or ability to lay down their shield and sword, and be able to talk. It's a big one. Rob?
Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon.
Yeah, we've got a couple of folks in the Keystone Group that have actually gone through separation and divorce, and they are some of the biggest and best contributing members of the group. By nature, they're heavily involved, and they have made a new life for themselves, and they seem to be doing just fine. So it is important to remember that all things are not going to be fixed or made better to the extent that the family comes back and everything is like it was in the beginning. It just too much damage has occurred, and it's just not going to happen. But it is important, and this is the important message here, is that this person, and we go back to what we said at the very beginning of this meeting, and that is burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. And as long as he trusts in his higher power and he continues to clean house, and that's, again, they're just repeating that again, it is dependent upon his relationship with his higher power, and it is absolutely 100% possible to recover, irrespective of their home situation and or relationships that they have or don't have with others. Again, very much of a expectation setting kind of situation for the recovering alcoholic, especially if they're expecting that this is going to make things, rainbows and that type of thing. It's just not going to happen in a lot of cases. This is serious stuff. a lot of damage is usually done, and people just don't, they just can't recover from all of that in the manner in which you might think that things would get back to the way they were before. Just isn't. So this next paragraph that we're going to read, I have a lot of things that are underlined here, so we'll go through this kind of slowly as well. Rob?
Yeah, and before I do it, I just want to read one line over again because it is so important. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. I cannot stress that enough. You know, a lot of people come into the fellowship hoping to get things back, trying to get their wife back, trying to get their job back, trying to get this back, trying to get that back. And when they get those things back after they've quit drinking for a couple of months, they go back out. It's not dependent upon getting things back. It's creating a relationship with God. And as I say, I can't stress that enough. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances.
A lot of promises there. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep. Just a lot of promises. And it's really kind of a good punctuation for what we're talking about right now. Walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. Again, not going to be perfect, but if every day you're asking yourself what the next right thing to do is, and you're doing that, and you're continuing to build upon your recovery, good things are going to happen. And it just repeats that here. And I can't emphasize that enough. My health has improved since I've stopped drinking. A couple of medications I was taking, in fact, to mask what was really my withdrawal symptoms. They were misdiagnosed as just tremors, and I've been able to completely eliminate those prescription drugs in order to help that, because the tremors are gone. I mean, it just happened. As one example, just one example. And as long as you're trusting in your higher power, you know better than anything we could have planned, there is what we're going to see. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. And that's another thing is its attitude. Just think of it from an attitude standpoint. If you are, in fact, doing all of the right things, it should be apparent to you at some point in time in your recovery, not way down the road, but early on, that things have gotten better. And if you can focus on those things that have gotten better, if you can focus on the fact that things are getting better, you are going to have a better time with your recovery, no matter what your situation is. Rob?
Yeah, page 68, the basis of trusting and relying upon God, trusting infinite God rather than finite self. You know, when we stay in fit spiritual health, by helping others. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety.
You know, this is one of those, written at a time when there was more access to the family. I will say that in most cases now, when you're working with a sponsee, chances are you're not going to be engaged with the wife or the husband or anybody as a member of their family, that type of thing. But again, this is still possible to do exactly what they're saying here if you're helping to mentor and coach your particular sponsee. They can do these things just as well as you can. I mean, it's up to them to that this has been, that this that they have been sick and should be treated accordingly. It's not, there's a good way of kind of weaving that in. You don't have to just say, hey, I've been sick, so you need to be nice to me, kind of thing, because that's not going to be accepted or taken very well. But you've got to at least avoid the resentment and the jealousy, the things that are going on. It's just work with your sponsee. I guess that's the best way I can say it. Have them prepared so that when they are faced with these challenges, that they can actually have some type of response that is positive and has the growing effect that you want in a positive sense. Rob?
Yeah, Leo, I just want to bring in one thing here. When it talks about arousing resentment or jealousy, when I first came into the fellowship, after I'd been in for a couple of months, my wife said to me one night before I went out, she said, "Why is it that when you leave, you're miserable, but when you come home from a meeting, you're in a good mood?" And that baffled me because I didn't know what to say to her. I was enjoying the people I was with at the fellowship, obviously. So I used to, I'd go to a daytime meeting, and there were a lot of long timers there, people that had been in the fellowship for a long period of time. And I told them about what I'd heard. And one of the gentlemen said to me, says, "Rob, you've entered a new way of living. And your wife, she sees a difference in you, but she doesn't understand why there's a difference and what you're getting from the fellowship and the meetings that you're going to." He said, "Bring her to an open meeting. Let her see the people that you're hanging out with and what goes on at these meetings so that she can understand what you're seeing and what you're getting." And it was one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got, because my wife came, she got to meet who I was hanging around with, got to see the fun that was going on in these meetings, saw what the format's like and things like that. And she started coming to meetings on Friday nights and got friendly with the people that I was hanging out with, and as I say, it relieved her an awful lot, because she could see how much fun we had in the meetings, how good they were for us, and why we can't come home with a smile. And why, when we look in these squares, we see so many people smiling, because it's a brand new way of living. That, we're not miserable anymore. We found a way out that, our worst day sober is better than our best day drunk. So I hope I said that correctly, but I think everybody knows exactly where I'm coming from with that. We have got a brand new life that we can lead. And the excitement, the joy, wow. And you know what? I want to give it away to everybody I can. Not everybody wants it. Not everybody wants to do what needs to be done. But hey, I want everybody to get this and enjoy life. I'm getting off my soapbox now. Hope I don't break my ankle as I do it.
You're doing good, Rob.
If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problem, tell the Newcomers family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism.
Hey, I can't really add much more than what Rob just did with regard to his own situation and how he helped solve the issue and answered the question that his wife had for him. I'm just going to say that it's worth noting, if you do in fact have some success with solving the relationship issues and problems with your family, it's worth noting and it's worth sharing, because people need to hear the success stories. That's just as important as talking about the challenges and how you're dealing with those challenges, but it's just as important to hear the success stories, because people need to see and feel the fact that this program actually works and works beyond where we are now, which is beyond just the not drinking. This is all part of recovery for sure, but you're graduating to a more um, higher level of recovery at this point when you're working on relationships and that type of thing. Excuse me. All right, Rob.
And we're starting to go into an area that I love. Assuming we're spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their homes. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so.
Yeah, it's going to be dependent on the person. Also, it depends on where you are in your recovery. If you're brand new in your recovery and these are triggers for you, and there are those type of things that make you nervous and kind of twitchy, and it causes you problems and potential slipping and relapsing, it's probably a good idea for you to avoid certain situations that you know that you're going to be challenged and you're going to have a hard time. Now, I'm going to say that this particular group is not one that is in their 20s or early 30s, where you've got the challenge of a lot of friends that still maybe have one foot in college, and one foot out, and they're still kind of in that, what I'll call is a more proactive party kind of mode and atmosphere. Those challenges are tough, I will admit, and for a young newcomer, those are things that are going to be that are going to need to be dealt with. But with the age of most people in this particular meeting, we've got friends right now that don't care whether you drink or not. They just don't, and that makes it a lot easier on us because we can now be around some of these things, and we can go through these triggers and say, where liquor is served, there's hardly a restaurant that you can go to that doesn't have its own bar and that doesn't serve alcohol. And certainly it's going to be there. But if your recovery is strong and you're in a good place spiritually, I think it's just fine. I think most people will find themselves actually being, and then I say this because it happened to me, where I felt a little bit more triumphant with my recovery by being in a situation that used to be a trigger for me. And I was able to, and I'm not talking about struggling through it. I'm talking about actually functioning normally, which is a great word for a recovering alcoholic. But recovering normally, I mean, going through that and being able to be around it without having any of those, challenges. I can go a day or 3 or 5, somewhere in that neighborhood, and not think about drinking whatsoever. I'm at that point in time in my recovery. However, somebody will say, well, don't you think about it from time to time? Well, sure, I think about it, and it's fleeting. It's a something that I remember doing, whether that is making a particular dish that I tended to drink beer. I mean, when you're barbecuing, for example, it's you've got one hand with a spatula that's turning burgers and the other hand has a beer in it. It's that kind of thing that makes you think, I used to drink beer when I did this, and I'll smile and I'll say to myself, not anymore. And I'm just fine with it, and I look over at somebody else that is drinking a beer and I feel good. It's okay. So I guess what we're trying to say here is that if your recovery is strong enough, if you're down the path far enough, and if you've got a good sponsor and you've got, you're tapped into that inner strength and that higher power, then it shouldn't matter that you're watching a show. It's called Mad Men, and it was like, I mean, drinking was woven into every scene in that show, and it was tough, for me when I was drinking to watch that show, because I wanted to have that drink in my hand just like they did while they were doing it, and kind of trying to insert myself into that show. But I can tell you now, things like watching a commercial about alcohol, I can watch it. I can think, well, that looks like they're having a good time. I bet that bourbon tastes good, whatever that is. but it's fleeting. Just like I said, I just move on and I'm good. So I don't think that what they're trying to say here is that you can't isolate yourself from alcohol forever to the point that you are now antisocial, because that's no fun. That's just no fun. You just have to be able to say that you've got a strong higher power, inner strength, a mature recovery, and you should be able to get through all of this. We'll continue on. Rob?
We will. And, they're going to give us some really good examples, et cetera. But the whole thing is that, treatment center talk about triggers, people, places, and things. This process, by going through the 12 steps, takes the bullets out of the gun. So if you pull that trigger, nothing's going to happen. Assuming we are spiritually fit, though, remember, it always contingent on our spiritual connection. And if we do not have a good spiritual connection, the malady of the mind will return, and we are against defense against that first strength. So the process will remove the triggers. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem.
Yeah. I like this thing about the Eskimo and showing up with a bottle of scotch. That's Shackleton. If you read anything about Shackleton and the fact that they found his ship that he abandoned and was able to save everybody on board, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole story that goes with it, but they found a box, a wooden box full of bottles of scotch up there. And so I always think of that when I read this passage, is that Shackleton's scotch, interestingly enough, they wanted to remove those bottles and sell them for thousands of dollars a piece, but they were squashed, and those bottles still sit in that box up there in the White North. And I'll just say that that's an Eskimo showing up with a bottle of scotch reminds me of Shackleton and his adventures up north. Sidebar. Sorry, I digress. Okay, we meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with their spiritual status. Okay, so that's a growing point. It's that belief structure that they have in that inner strength and the relationship they have with their higher power. And notice I'm saying that it is a relationship with the higher power, not just specifically God. I think that that's an important distinction here for people to understand, that when we're talking about their spiritual status, it isn't dependent upon them saying that and or getting to the point of believing in, quote, God. They need to have tapped into that inner strength. And it is to the degree that they have been able to find that inner strength with regard to the relationship with this higher power that they've been able to find, that truly matters in this regard. So it is something that is kind of challenging, if you will, because if you are a sponsor and you have a sponsee that is talking to you about the fact that they're struggling with this finding of a higher power, it is a process that can take months, if not years. And as long as they are willing to believe, and I'm going to go back to the very basic part of this, if they're willing to believe in a power greater than themselves, whatever that power is, as long as it is a legitimate power, they are going to be doing okay. And you just have to walk shoulder to shoulder with them as they get through these triggers as they go along. Any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory that he would escape the alcohol problem, maybe temporarily, maybe they go to therapy or some type of recovery program. If, I myself, my wife decided on her own, as crazy as it sounds, to just stop drinking. She's not one of us by any stretch of the imagination, just flat out stop drinking. And we removed the alcohol from the home for a period of time. There's alcohol back in the house now, I will admit, but I was having a hard time in the beginning with the hiding and the lying about my drinking. And unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately, I'll change that. Finding a bottle of something that I had hidden in the garage and going, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And the challenge was on, am I going to tap into my higher power? Am I going to admit that I found this alcohol, take it to my wife and say, look what I found, being completely above board and upfront about my past? Or am I going to hide it and actually try and drink and get away with it? Well, I will admit in the very, very beginning, but when I was, sober for 2 weeks or 3 or 4, and then drinking, I did that a couple of times. I was caught every time. You just can't drink and not get caught. And I finally admitted that to myself. And that was one of my breakthrough moments with my higher power. And that was the ability to have the strength and the courage to admit that I couldn't drink and hide it from my wife. I just can't. And I know that now in spades. So, Rob?
Remember, if you feel that you might drink, remember what Bill did. Remember when his business deal fell apart at the Mayflower Hotel. He could have gone into the bar, thought, I've been sober 6 months now, a couple of drinks, maybe 3, maybe 6. There goes the alcoholic mind. But what did he do? He went to make a phone call, called the Reverend Tunks, got some phone numbers. Okay, so if you're feeling a little unsure, go help somebody. Remember, that's what this book is all about. And all through the book, it's telling us, help other people, keep in fit spiritual condition and help others. We can't stress that enough. And the book keeps saying it over and over and over again. So in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking. If, and it's a big if, we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, and even plain old whoopee parties. To the person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't.
And Party Rob can tell you all about those whoopee parties. It is important that you don't isolate yourself and withdraw from society and your family. And I think one of the biggest ones here is like a wedding or a funeral or some event that is quite important for you to attend. There is a ritual that is a part of it. And at this point in time in my recovery, what I basically do in those situations is, one, I've usually got my wife with me, which is part of my recovery, to say, I'm not drinking, and watch me. And I don't mean watch me by watching me to keep me from doing it. It is, I'm not gonna drink, and all you have to do is just cursory, keep an eye on me, but I'm not gonna drink. The other thing is I've gotten to a point, and there was a good transition point for me in my early recovery when I finally got comfortable with telling people that I was an alcoholic and that I couldn't drink because it affected me in a negative manner. At first I would say, hey, I'm allergic to alcohol, et cetera, et cetera. And in truth, I really am. But I was doing it in such a way that there was some kind of medical condition that was going to happen or something like that, which was kind of a half truth. Now I just I mean, whether it's family or friends and there's drinking involved, if somebody says, hey, do you want a beer? First thing I'll say is no. But the second thing is I'll back it up and I'll just say, hey, I'm an alcoholic and I can't drink. I just can't. And remember, like I said before, we're at an age and a time where our friends and family don't care whether we drink or not. So they would just look at me and go, hey, great, you want a soda pop, whatever it might be. And there I go, and usually I've already got something anyway, because I'll try to head it off so that I don't make it awkward for somebody else. I'll just go ahead and get me an iced tea lemon and lemonade, or I might get a soda, or I just may, have something else completely. And at that point, nobody's asking me whether or not I want a beer or not, because I've already got a drink in my hand anyway, and it's something that's obvious and non-alcoholic. But I can't overemphasize enough that if there's a legitimate reason, and that's what they say here, if there is one, it is important to go ahead and participate. And there's nothing wrong with admitting to somebody that is going to be there to just say, this is my situation. And, so there it is. And hopefully they'll abide. It's interesting when you finally get to the point that you're comfortable admitting it, you find out that everybody that is around you is happy for you in a certain extent. And there's another piece which is actually just as good, is they don't really care. That's great. I used to think that they cared. They were like, oh my gosh, Leo's not drinking, something's wrong with the entire room, and Leo's causing it. They just don't care. They just don't care. So when you get to that point, it's a great feeling. That's what I could say always. It's a great feeling to be in and around people that are enjoying themselves, whether they're drinking or not, and finding that you don't have to drink and you can still have a great time with it. So that's really what you're going after.
Yes, we are not a glum lot. Leo, I'm going to back it up a little bit and read, because these next two paragraphs go together so well.
Yep.
So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking, if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain old whoopee parties. To a person who has experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Do not think of what you can get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead.
Yep, we've just talked about it. I don't think I could add much more. I think that we get the gist of what they're trying to say here. So the bottom line is that in your recovery, one of the great things about it is your ability to be able to go into a social setting and actually function normally. Again, that word normally, again, it comes up with others, and it's not. You don't feel like it's up to you to bring all of the joy and the good naturedness. You can participate and not drink, and things are just fine. It just is. They always do it. That's the caveat. If you are on shaky ground, especially if you're a newcomer, it's probably a better idea for you to go help somebody else, be with some other alcoholic and kind of talk through things, than it is to go and sit there and find yourself sitting at a table. There's, glasses of champagne there because people are off dancing and that kind of thing. And you're looking around, nobody's paying attention to you. And there you go. You just start drinking somebody else's champagne and you're off to the races, which is never good. Never, never, never good. Rob?
Okay. Think of what you can bring to it. Here are specific instructions on staying sober. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. Again, it's telling us, You're not in fit spiritual condition, go help another alcoholic. Okay? This keeps us sober. Sorry, I just got to throw that in, because the book every once in a while mentions about helping others. So I just like to, point that out.
Yep.
Why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you're with a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Let your friends know they're not to change their habits on your account. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor.
Yeah, this is an important message here. Here you are, that you could look at it that you've lost something and be glum and down in the mouth, right? Or you could look at it the opposite way, that you have gained something. You are now back to a more normal performing person in a social event or a business event that has a social kind of aspect to it, as far as that goes. And you can actually start to feel better about the fact that you aren't going to say something that you are going to regret. You're not going to do something that's going to be embarrassing, not only for yourself, but for others. You were essentially going to do better. You're going to do the right things for once. So there's that attitude thing again. You have the right attitude, you're going to be fine. If you don't have the right attitude, then you need to work more on your spiritual condition and work towards that. And I think we all kind of get what we're trying to say here. And I can't overemphasize that there was my transition in being awkward and uncomfortable with telling people about my alcoholism, and then being comfortable with telling them that, was a major milestone in my recovery. And once I got comfortable with it, I had no qualms whatsoever telling people that I'm alcoholic. I don't wear it like a badge of honor. I don't, put it in people's faces. It's just when it comes up, if it comes up, I just say, nope, I'm not drinking. And if somebody looks at me just a little bit more inquisitively, I just say, I'm an alcoholic. I've had my fun and I've caused many problems, and it just doesn't agree with me. And I just can't and really don't want to drink anymore. And they take it and they go, Roger that. And we keep right on going. So, Rob?
It used to be that people would keep looking at me to make sure I didn't make a fool of myself or do something that was inappropriate. Now people don't look at me anymore because I don't do those stupid things anymore. Remember, what can I bring to the situation? Okay. Weddings, parties, whatever, now I can be present. I can remember what's going on. I don't embarrass myself anymore. I just have a good time. Why? Because I'm there for the right reasons. I'm there to celebrate with you. I'm not there to drink the bar dry anymore. And it's such a better way of living in life. I feel better in the morning too, because I don't have to worry about, geez, where's my car? And did I embarrass myself? Did I knock something over? Did I spill something on somebody? Did I say something inappropriate to somebody that that I didn't really mean? These are all things that now I don't have to worry about that. I'm present. I'm there for the right reason. It's a beautiful way to live. Your job is now to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. Remember page 77, to be of maximum service to God, to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and to those around me. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed.
Yeah, this is a bit of a changing gears here. This is where you're actually going out to find and help others that are actually having trouble with their alcoholism. So we're kind of changing gears just slightly here with regard to what we've been talking about. We're talking about you as the alcoholic and engaging yourself in a social setting that is better that you're there than not, and having tapped into your higher power and being fit spiritually. Now we're talking about going into, an actual bar because your uncle is passed out and has been beat up by some guy that he challenged, etc., and you have to pour him in the back of his car and take him back home. If that sounds like it's something that happened to me, that did happen to me when I was in flight school and stuff and living close to my uncle. He was a really bad alcoholic, and one that would fight with others after he drank too much. So that's what we're talking about, is putting yourself into those situations to help somebody, get them out of the situation, and hopefully help them get to be in a better place. So we'll just keep going. And Rob, what we'll do is read all the way down to one who hates it.
Okay. Many of us keep liquor in our homes. We often need it to carry green recruits through a severe hangover. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they're non-alcoholic. But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. We feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. We're careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for this spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it.
Yeah, and so this is really going to be situation dependent. The first part of what Rob read, as far as each family, in light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. It's kind of like it's my home, my rules in that regard. So, and I don't mean that to be strong. It's just that if you feel that you're better off with no alcohol in the house, and we've done this where we've had people come over in the past, and what we did was we just said, we don't have alcohol, and if you want alcohol, please bring it. That's one of the things that we have stipulated early in my recovery. At this point in time, like I said, we do have alcohol in the house, which is a progression and a graduation, if you will. But we're very open about my alcoholism and that type of thing. Now, the other thing that I think is important here is that, you don't want to be a crusader, and you don't want to be in that situation where you're, a teetotaler by telling others, you really should watch your drinking. You're drinking, you've had 3 drinks. Don't you think that's enough? You just don't. You're going to find that not only are you going to start singling yourself out, but people are going to start to move away from you, and you're going to put yourself back into an isolated situation. Whether it's an alcoholic or whether it's just normal drinkers, nobody wants somebody watching over them when they're drinking and that type of thing. So I think we kind of get that as well. It's going to cause people to repel you, and you're going to find yourself hoping that you don't push people away. And I think that's really what we're trying to get there. Rob?
Sounds great. Do you want me to finish up this chapter?
Yeah, let's finish the chapter up, and then
Okay.
we'll open it up for Bill.
Someday we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcohol problem. But we shall be of little use if our attitude is one of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to.
Yeah, it's so true. I think that Alcoholics Anonymous has in fact done exactly what they said that they hope that they do with not only the fellowship, but also with this book. They've achieved that over the last several decades. And I think that they've found that this is one of the best programs that a person can take on in order to become a recovered alcoholic. The bitterness and the hostility, I think, in most recovered alcoholics has certainly gone away, and we're there. I guess it's worth reading again. After all, our problems were of our own making. Yep, we're the ones that picked up the bottle in the first place. And bottles were only a symbol at this point, obviously. And besides, we have stopped fighting anybody and anything. We have to. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a very, very bad and dire situation. It's just going to happen. I think this is another important piece for a sponsor to kind of have in their hip pocket, because when there is this tendency to want to, force people to forgive you or force people to be around you once you've started your recovery, that becomes a hostile situation. And it's something that you have to watch out for, both as yourself as a recovering alcoholic, as well as being a sponsor for a sponsee. All right, we're going to finish up there. I'm going to open it up for Bill. If you would like to share a few words with us, please.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, Leo and Rob. It's a good job. This is a real important part of the book. This is the meat and potatoes of the program. But basically what Bill's doing, he's giving us suggestions or instructions on how to deal with somebody else when we're trying to help them. And he goes through all different little scenarios and different instructions here on how to do it. And for me, the best way to do this is ask my sponsor for help. That's what a sponsor's for. And your sponsor will tell you what they did when they were sponsoring other people. So when you first get into trying to help somebody else, your sponsor has a wealth of information. And when I sponsor people, what I tell them is, you're going to start helping somebody else. You have my number. You call me if you have any kind of an issue, and I'll tell you what I would do in that situation. And that's the best way to get through this, is with another alcoholic trying to help you. And when you get that, you'll be able to help another alcoholic. And this is not a one and done thing. We just don't go out and try to help one person and then that's the end of it. Now we're good. We're fixed forever. This is like if you have diabetes, you have to take your medication every single day. And our medication is helping somebody else. That's basically what this program tells me. When you work with somebody else, that will keep you sober more than anything else that anybody can come up with. According to this book, that's what keeps us sober more than anything. So don't ever be afraid to help somebody, because at the very least, you're going to be helping yourself stay sober. And most likely, don't think that you don't have enough information or you don't have enough knowledge to help another alcoholic, because you'll be surprised how just reaching out to somebody might be what keeps them from drinking that day. So don't ever be afraid to help another person, because by doing that, you're going to help them somewhat and you're going to help yourself. It's mutually beneficial. So again, we're always supposed to try to help somebody. That's what this program tells me. When I get to step 12, it says, try to carry this message to other alcoholics. I'm mandated by step 12 to try to help somebody else. And even if you can't get out to somebody, or you just don't have the way to do it or whatever, going to a meeting and sharing honestly when it comes around to your turn to share, that can be 12-step work, because you never know, you're helping somebody on the other side of the room. So that's basically what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to try to help another alcoholic, and that's what keeps us sober. That's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Bill.
All right, let's close things out with the Serenity Prayer, Rob,
Okay.
and then we'll open it up.
Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Thanks. Thank you, Rob.